Data was called the new oil of the information age. But of late, countries who have both data and oil have begun racing for yet a new material. And the new oil of this age are minerals: cobalt, lithium, graphite, rare earths, and nickel. President Trump has arm twisted Ukraine for a mineral deal. He covets Greenland for the same reason. Russia is believed to have offered its own minerals to the United States. And China, watching silently from far, accounts for over 80% of the world's rare earths like gallium, germanium, and antimony. China has said it won't issue licenses to the United States for these rare earths. Now, all of these rare earths are critical for the manufacture of microchips, satellites, and smartphones, the gadgets that make the information revolution of our times. And here's the other fact: China controls about 70% of the production of rare earths and 90% of all its processing, according to the estimates by the US Geological Survey. Joining me to make sense of this ongoing mineral race in the world right now are Dheeraj Nayyar and Srinath Sridharan. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. Dheeraj, make sense of this for us, the developments over the last couple of days and hours. Minerals are the new oil. What are India's options really?
Yeah. So at the moment, we are not, big producers of minerals other than, coal and iron ore. And, the critical minerals of the future are really the ones you mentioned at the start, plus, copper, zinc, aluminium.
Yes.
The things which are used in, electric vehicles or renewable energy infrastructure or high-tech chips or even weapons, satellites, all of the things you mentioned. So I think going forward, once you start manufacturing these things, you need a lot of these raw materials. The thing right now is that India, apart from not being, big producer of any of these, is not also a big manufacturer of any of these things at this
Right.
point. But that is likely to change. Right now, even our EVs, which are made in India, the batteries are imported from outside. But
Yes.
that ecosystem is building up, and that will change. And once that changes, we'll again find slowly that we are moving into the kind of situation that we faced with oil all these decades.
Right.
Because we don't produce enough, we are dependent on imports, and therefore dependent on, vulnerable to price fluctuations, to supply disruptions. So we don't want to go into that path with regard to critical minerals. And therefore, I think the challenge for India, of course, the one thing that is being done is to look outside and tie up with friendly countries, supply
Yes.
chains, with say, Chile or Argentina or Australia. But I think beyond that, one shouldn't be 100% vulnerable to imports, even from
Right.
friendly countries, because you don't know how these things will, evolve in the future. So we must explore much more in India, and we must produce at least a certain amount, if not 100%, in India.
Srinath, what must India really do to, a country that's soon to be the world's third largest economy? We have very few friendly countries that we can source all of these rare earths from. As Dheeraj mentioned, it's time for us to start diversifying, start exploring. Do you think enough of exploration has been done in India? What can we do? For instance, could we start looking at the seabed? That's been seen as another source of these rare earths and minerals that Dheeraj mentioned.
Yeah, thanks, Sandeep. To start off, first I must congratulate Dheeraj on a wonderful, thought-provoking op-ed that he had written on this topic. Just to
Yes.
build on what he had mentioned, I think very importantly, we already have examples. ONGC Videsh, you can mine in India as well as explore collaboratively with other friendly nations. But Sandeep, the challenge is the tag friendly seems to be changing very quickly nowadays.
Yes.
Are these long-term friends or are they, fair weather friends? That's a bigger challenge of it. So I think we must explore everything because there is no one single answer. The larger tough conversation for us is the consumption economy that we are building, or a narrative around India.
Yes.
Would mean that everything around emerging technologies, data, devices, and consumer electronics is going to put more pressure to procure. And while India wants to say make in India or the manufacturing PLI, the challenge is if we are going to be dependent on other nations,
Right.
we will end up being an assembler for very, very long time to come. That's the largest challenge that we have economically.
Right, absolutely. A larger challenge economically, that India might be just an assembler, and of course we are a consumer as well. That's going to fuel a lot of the demand that we have, as you mentioned, Srinath. And of course, Dheeraj, this is the argument of your piece as well. But, is there a need? You're a policy guy. Give us an idea of where the Indian government's mineral earths policy should be, the rare earths policy, these metal policies. How much of this will be actually driven by the government of India?
Quite a lot, actually, because in the US, everything that is below the surface belongs to whoever owns that part of the surface. So if it's under
Yes.
your house, it belongs to you. But in India, all resources belong to the state.
Yes.
Right? All the people, and the state is the custodian of those resources. So policy matters. And I think, where we are missing a trick in India is that, as I said in my first statement, that we are very good with, surface minerals like iron
Yes.
or coal, which are relatively close to the surface, but a lot of minerals actually occur deeper down, a kilometer down, 2 kilometers down under the surface, and that requires technology and that requires massive investment. We have the geology.
Yes.
Our geology is not dissimilar to Australia, South Africa, Canada, which are all mineral-rich countries. And actually going below the surface is in many ways much easier because you do much less displacement above the surface, because you can go straight underground and then mine there or explore there. But I think what we don't have in India right now is like exploration. So exploration currently is done really by two PSUs, which is the Geological Survey and the Mineral Exploration Corporation. They don't have the funds, they don't have the technology. What you need is exploration happening, and exploration is a risky business, as you know, Sandeep. You may do 100 explorations and find one.
Yes.
But that one that you find is the one that you monetize. So in India right now, the laws are such that if you find something, you must give the data to the government and the government will auction it. That gives very little incentive for the explorer to do exploration. So I think the global practice is that, where there is no discovered mineral. So, I mean, how do you auction? We have an auction system, but how do you auction something which you don't know whether it exists or not?
Right.
So for existing minerals or those which are discovered, auctions are great. But for those which are not, and where, deep exploration is needed, you have to allow, explorers to come in and monetize any find they have. Of course, the government will have a revenue share which they can fix, royalties which they can fix. So it's not that the government will be deprived of revenue in any way, but I think we need this paradigm shift where we need to encourage exploration, risk-taking in exploration beyond just the public sector companies.
Absolutely. Well put, Dheeraj. The fact that we actually need to incentivize exploration. And Srinath, I'm going to ask you that in conclusion, what is the government's drill, baby, drill policy? If I can quote President Trump, what should it look like? Dheeraj has put together a lot of those elements to that. Do you want to add something to what the government needs to do to incentivize exploration? Of course, and he mentioned those two departments of the government, completely underfunded. One doesn't even know where their offices are, and they are going to be literally very critical if we are to be, self-sufficient in exploration of these minerals.
I think two words of caution, Sandeep. One is, as we explore newer technologies, we don't have the capability technologically. When I say we as a country, I'm not bucketing only the public sector or the private sector.
Yes.
So it is expensive. That's a reality. But if you have to ensure 1/6 of humanity has access to what we go ahead, we will have to start spending money. That's one. Two is, I think, in the last 20 years of Indian growth, economic growth, and aspirational urbanization that we have had. I mean, why am I quoting urbanization? Because the power consumption and the consumption of various data and emerging technologies is only increasing. For example, 25 years ago, the number of switch points in every single average household in India was 4. You had a tube light, you had a fan, and you had 2 plug points. Today, if you look at your home, the average number of plug points or the sockets in an average room is probably about 11 to 12. And same thing with commercial establishments, hotels, and so forth. So what does it mean? It means that in a frenzy to mine, explore and mine, where do we draw the line with consciousness towards environment and social awareness? And I think the challenge in the last 20 years, lots of groups have had these challenges and pushbacks in states. I mean, Goa, we have had to have a Supreme Court intervention for a couple of these. And I think that's something that we'll have to be very cautious when we bring into let's say, the new mineral policy of sorts, whether it is or anywhere. And that's where I'm a little challenged, saying that, where do we draw the line? I mean, one, we will say that we need this to be self-sufficient. The other is, we'll have to say that the Mother Earth or the Dharti Earth, once you kind of destroy it, you can't get the balance back. So this is a challenge that I find that the mining sector has to be far more self-regulated.
Right.
I mean, That sounds like an irony by itself, but that's the reality.
Right, absolutely irony, but that's the reality, and India has no option, as you said, gentlemen, the fact that we have to explore ways of becoming self-sufficient in all of these materials, minerals, that if we are to stay ahead and indeed become the third largest economy by the end of this decade. Thank you very much for joining us, Dheeraj Nayat, Srinath Sridharan.